Welcome to Tough Conversations with David Wood, where play meets depth. We help teams and high-performing leaders like you to master your tough conversations so you succeed in your career and in your life. When we avoid tough conversations, we stay small. Teams stay disengaged, conflicted, and ultimately end up quitting. When we lean in and master our tough conversations, they become the defining moments that literally shape our careers, our relationships, and our lives. So let's dive in and master your next tough conversation so you can be the leader that you would follow. Let's play.
Good men need to help their confused brothers to become good men and protectors and delicious beasts, because we don't want that to go away either.
I think This is going to be useful as we get into it. And Peter Van Winkle has got a comment here. Love it. Aroused heading into the next meeting. Thank you.
Nice.
You are welcome, Peter. So what we're talking about, the Me Too movement, when I'm a man, when I found out about the Me Too movement and started seeing it, I don't know what my initial reaction was, but after that, I started getting scared. Mm-hmm. I was like, damn, what have I done in the past, and could I be crucified for it? Mm-hmm. That was, now later I was able to look at, well, hang on, I could learn something here. Where are my blind spots, and where have I been a total ass with women? And I managed to find some things, and I was like, oh, dude, that was bad. Let's not do that again. And I have reached out a couple of times and apologized, but there was a lot of fear because it didn't seem to be like, hey, we want to learn here. This is not okay. Guys, can you do it better? It didn't seem like that. It was like, you guys are all going to jail. So I just want to stop there and see if you have any reaction to that. That was my experience of me.
I can understand your fear. I actually did an 1.5 hour long Facebook Live with my partner around this because I felt a man should be there with me in the dialogue of this. But I had read an article by the New York Times where there was a male and female author, and they were suggesting that the only solution to this massive problem was to castrate every living male on the planet. And I reacted so strongly to that. I was like, no, that is not the solution. So I can understand the fear, because if within the collective there's this desire to castrate all males, that's a terrifying thing that goes into the body. It bypasses, logical mind.
Yeah, and it strikes me as, like, I think it doesn't seem to me to be super productive when there's a lot of if there's some anger, I can handle some anger if it's set up in context. If it's a lot of anger, I go into fight or flight.
Yeah.
So I suspect what happened is that the anger of women has bubbled up, and the fear, and it's got a voice, which is awesome. I'm like, yes, bring that. And then what happened is a lot of men, I'll speak for myself, went into fight or flight, like, whoa, I can't even hear this because I'm scared for my own safety now.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping is that now we can have calmer voices be heard, so that the message is still heard, and that I can listen and change my behavior and become more aware and apologize for what I can apologize for. And I'm assuming, and I can't speak to this, as I need you to, because I don't have the cover for it, but you're a woman, you can, but speak to what women can do as well to heal whatever's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, what's interesting is I'd never shared my rape story. And a month before Me Too happened, I came out on Facebook and did it live. And so it was really interesting so if you ever want to watch that, I go into it. And so there's a lot of emotion, and I share every graphic detail. And I did that because I was tired of people thinking I was this perfect creature, and I've always been perfect and everything's always perfect. I was like, no, the way that I am is because I chose to make my life have meaning outside of that one experience, and that one experience wasn't going to determine the theme of my life for the rest of my life. That was a conscious choice. And there was a lot of inner work I had to do, a lot of inner work. So I just wanted to say that, which was really interesting timing, because I was like, wow, like I didn't know that this was about to burst. It was like a dam that bursted, and it needed to burst, David, because collectively there's a lot of unconsciousness around sexuality, and there's been so much abuse, not just of women, but of little boys as well. So little girls, little boys, human beings are suffering profoundly with the shadow of sexuality, and that is everywhere. And there's inherited shadow, inherited pain, inherited trauma. And so it gets passed on, because what does a little boy do who's been violated when he starts to have the power to be sexual? He'll either completely shut down and never express his sexuality, or he'll become the perpetrator himself to try and resolve this unresolved trauma. And it happens as well with women. So there's either the shutdown or like the full seductive expression coming out in ways that are unconscious and not useful. So there's many, this is such a rich and deep conversation. It cannot be solved in one conversation, certainly not a short one.
Yeah.
But needless to say, it had to be had, and we had to bring it out. And yes, sometimes these things are shocking, right?
Can I highlight a couple of things that you just said? You said the two common responses from women are to shut down the sexuality, or it can come out in unconscious ways. Mm-hmm. That's wow. That's such a rich topic to me, because, and that would make sense. So a woman might be unconsciously flirting or being seductive and expressing that energy and not even realizing it, because it's not okay in our society to just express attraction and flirt and whatever. So it might come out and she doesn't even know that she's doing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And women are sold something domesticated when we're in that state, because once we break free, we don't care. But we're sold this idea that our only value really is our beauty, and the only real commodity that we do have to bargain with is our sexuality. And in fact, our society sells everything with sex. So sex has become a commodity, something you can just swipe through and pick and go, and it's very transactional. So that's something that we've been sold. And for those of the ones who really go, okay, that's what I'm supposed to be, then finally they go out and express it, then they're slut shamed and blamed and labeled. And
that
so
sucks.
It sucks.
So it's like, hey, society says you're valued for your sexuality, but if it's overt, we're going to slut shame you. And in some cultures, we're going to cover you up so that you can't titillate us and, influence us.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so as a young woman, you come to realize, well, my power is my sexiness. And so it's used to a lot of advantages. And so the thing that I don't tell people how to live, but what I want us to recognize is that what we're doing and when we're doing it. So I used to dress super sexy and walk down the street, and just fairly regularly. I just do this thing, and I wasn't conscious I was doing it, but I was doing it. And one day I caught on. I'm like, I do that when I feel kind of shitty about myself. I'll wear something super sexy and I'll walk down the street and I get whistled at or I get looked at, and then I feel better, and I'm kind of boosting myself. So I felt horrible about that when I discovered it, and I was shaming myself and criticizing myself. But one day I went, no. The job here is not to shame and criticize. The job is to notice what I'm doing and perhaps to shift the purpose of it. So initially then, if I needed to boost my self-confidence, there's other ways I can do that than manipulating the world around me with my beauty. Okay?
I feel something in myself relax when you say there's other ways you can do it than manipulate.
Yeah.
I realize that I think I have a deep resentment of how I've been manipulated. And talking to you, I can understand it. And I've done a bunch of Morehouse courses, and I'm guessing you might have, you've done your own training. I was once talking to a woman, and it was over 2 days at an event, and I finally realized that I felt hooked. She had no intention of having sex with me, it seemed, but she was constantly flirting. It was a way of being. And I felt hooked. It was like when I eat sugar and I feel like I have to have more sugar. I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I heard from my Morehouse training that women have learned to be covert with their sexuality to try and manipulate and get things done, because if she stands up and says, I want this, now she's a bitch.
Or a slut.
If she does it with sex, she's a slut.
Yes,
So
exactly.
she's kind of screwed, no pun intended. But then you've got men. So the women, I've heard, can resent this. They can resent that they've had to use these different means to try and manipulate. But from my side, I resent when there are hooks and I don't even realize that I'm just being hooked and manipulated. Yeah. And if a woman says, I had a woman, you probably know her, very powerful tantrika, say to me once, she said something, I won't say what it was, but it kind of hooked me. And then she said, I apologize. I know that that's a charged issue for you and it's a turn on area for you. And that might've been a hook, and I apologize. I don't want to do that. Oh my God, the trust I had in this woman who has the power to manipulate me, but consciously chose not to.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's part of erotic evolving, like the erotic evolution of human beings. So we evolve physically and mentally and maybe a little bit spiritually if we dabble in that direction, but emotionally and sexually we tend to be very stunted in terms of this particular society. But I mapped out 5 evolutionary stages of eros, and they're all very important, and they're part of what is to be a human. It's a theory, but I really try and notice, okay, this person is at that stage of development, and we need to just celebrate that. Yeah. But really meeting them where they're at and understanding they don't have that capacity to meet me in a different place. I might be in a different place.
Okay. So I want to get to a couple of practicals that people can use. I want listeners to walk away with a couple of things they can do. So I'm hearing one thing for a woman is that she can be aware, like increase awareness and go, oh, I notice I did that, without shaming herself. I notice I was using that as a hook, or I notice I shut down. I shut down my sensuality. I shut down my arousal. I wonder if there's something else I can do. Is there one more tip you could give to women of how they can navigate this, let's say in the workplace, but it applies everywhere?
Well, it's actually for everyone. Here's what I would love, David.
All right.
I would love our human collective, our human family, to start to understand that there's something gorgeously beautiful about sexual tension or erotic tension. It scintillates with electricity and aliveness in a way that almost nothing else does. I mean, I don't really look at chocolate in that way. I mean, it's exciting, but not in that same electrical way that happens when 2 or more people come together, right? And their field is just like, and it's like, whoa. But we are a instant gratification society. We think that the second we feel a little tickle, we need to act on it. And what I would love is for us to learn to delight in the feeling of aliveness without making anyone else responsible for it. And I really want men to hear that, because it's often like projected, like if I'm aroused by you, you need to now be, want to interact with me sexually. I'm like, no, but you get to have your arousal.
You think it needs to be reciprocal. Okay.
Yes. And for the women to really get that they don't need to act on arousal that they're witnessing in other people, and to also really allow themselves to feel their own. And it doesn't have to even be externally shown. You could just be feeling it and keep doing your work and having your thing and being productive, but you're feeling lit up and you're using it for a creative source. So the more we can actually play with erotic tension and let it enliven us, and we can relax and understand it doesn't have to have immediate meaning and immediate gratification and et cetera, then we become more masterful around this. And that's why I like to see people lit up around me, and I know exactly what I'm doing. And I have very clear boundaries. And I'm able to communicate that in a way that's deeply respectful because I respect myself. And I have really come to have those clear boundaries and the clear yes of, hey, I'm feeling really alive right now. This is amazing. Thank you for the inspiration. And that little prayer of mine, I guess, could start even today with the listeners. The next time you start to feel a little bit aroused, just notice your arousal, because we often block it. Let yourself notice it and take a really big breath into it and just acknowledge that it's you thrumming with life. That's it. You don't have to act. You don't have to do anything about it. You get to be a sexual being and not have to do something every time you feel a little tickle.
I love that. So permission to feel, and it doesn't have to be reciprocal. The other person doesn't have to have turn on. I don't have to act on it. I don't have to even express it. I can just feel it and revel in it.
Yep.
I love that. And I want to know, for a woman specifically who is getting attention from a man, let's say in the workplace, and he's expressing, or let's say it's an innuendo or whatever it is, and she's not enjoying it. What's your recommendation there? Are you suggesting that firstly she try and feel good about it? Like, what's...
No, I'm not saying that, because sometimes it's just incredibly inappropriate. So that's why I want both sexes, everybody, to take responsibility first for their arousal. If you feel really turned on, enjoy it for a little bit. It may not be appropriate to express it, and really bring in that adult, cognitive, conscious side of yourself and go, wow, like, she's such a turn on. I'm at work. She's not giving me like the eyes or anything. So there's not like an invitation to really express it. I'm not feeling that welcoming, because you can sense that you are a smart creature. You're not silly. But we block all that because we're just overwhelmed by our own arousal, and we want to make it mean something, or that it has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's number one. If everyone could just settle into feeling that aliveness and kind of pull it back and congratulate themselves, like, ooh, that's really nice. How can I channel that into this project, right? That would be like number one. Yeah. But as a woman, if I'm receiving, I don't know, give me a sentence, a compliment, like what would it look like so I can really respond?
Wow. I'll give you an example. I was recently, a woman asked someone, do you paddle? And I heard it and I said, what kind of paddling? And I thought it was funny. He thought it was funny, and we laughed about it. And she didn't think it was funny. She felt uncomfortable. So let's say an example like that, there's some kind of sexual reference. It wasn't actually aimed at her, which I'm told since makes a big difference, but I don't know. Yeah. But she's not enjoying the conversation sexual. Yeah. She's feeling a bit uncomfortable about it.
Well, I think the answer might be too long for what we have time for, but I'll try and be really succinct, because this is a very deep psychosexual discussion.
Psychosexual.
It's psychosexual. That's what I specialize in. So, okay, there's a few things happening there. One, she obviously was in a different frame of mind, and then you reminded her that she's also a sexual being, and maybe that particular day or in that moment she wasn't really wanting to be reminded of that in herself. So that's like one thing that could have been triggered for her. It's not about you, but just like, whoa, like I don't feel safe now because I don't feel comfortable with my sexual self. So a lot of the work on behalf of women, and the work that I do with women, is to really claim that our personal sovereign space and fully abide in it. And that's actually was going to be my number two response to being safe. If we want safety, then we have to fully occupy our personal space. And if we don't, then there's too much room for a lot of other influences to come in, and that's very threatening. If we fully occupy that personal space. So if you were to say, I had two men at a conference one compliment me on my shoes. And I turned to someone else, I said it wasn't the shoes they were looking at, right? because I understand what's happening, but I also understand it's benign because I own myself. I own my space. I'm comfortable there. I know I don't owe any man anything. I don't have to look at you. I don't have to talk to you. I don't owe you anything. So if I do engage with you, it's because I desire to, right? So what we need to do as individuals is to understand what is it that we would love to get out of a conversation.
Back to that question, what would I love to have happen here?
Yes. So in that case of that woman, if she had, if she really was occupying her space and she could feel like that didn't land very nice. So you said it to me and it didn't land nice. I don't think it ever would not land nice, but from you, but it didn't land nice. I could say, that didn't feel very comfortable for me. I get what you're saying, but I'm not finding that funny. And just kind of owning like my feelings around it versus like shutting down. And I get that you might want to be playful with me, but today I'm actually in a lot of pain. Like I just lost my mother or my best friend or something's happened. And so it's our vulnerability in what we would love and the truth of what we're living that can actually create a bridge. And I think it's really important to, again, that curiosity and that willingness to lean in and to assume that this person isn't trying to hurt us or manipulate us, but that they're a good person and we can be reasonable with them. Now, if they're not, I'm very happy. I've used my fist a few times and broken a few noses. So I have clear boundaries.
You sounds like you do.
I do.
Wow.
But there's a lot that can happen before that piece. But some people don't respect anything. They don't respect no, they don't respect F off. They don't respect anything. So you have to resort to a very clear, distinct go away. Right?
All right. Wow. Well, I can see how I can get a glimpse of how deep this topic can run. And as we move to wrap up, I'm realizing that I could see this could be easily a 2-day course, a 2-week course, a 2-month course, a 2-year course to start learning and practicing how to occupy your space.
Yep.
How to become aware of what you're feeling, how to set boundaries really clearly. And then from those places, choice. Hey,
yes.
Can I enjoy this? What would I really love here? I want to have agency and create something.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and you're welcome. And just the last thing I would say is like the ability to self-soothe. Like that was scary or that was super uncomfortable, and just soothing ourselves so we don't layer the trauma, but we're actually able to fully move through an uncomfortable experience and let it go. I think this is a skill set that's really needed because we tend to get triggered a lot these days. And so that self-soothing skill is crucial so that we're not getting overwhelmed by our interactions.
Yeah. And I want to float something too before we go. It's been coming up in a local community. Some women haven't felt safe because we encourage people to express everything that's going on for them. And so guys are like, oh, woohoo, I can express my attractions. And then some women are like, dude, that's not appropriate, or I feel uncomfortable. And we're like, what do we do?
Yes.
And one thing that's occurred to me that I might try more, and I've suggested it to a couple of women, and they're like, yeah, that might work, is even check in with someone. If you're not sure, ask. If you want to express attraction, ask. Now, even that might trigger somebody, but you got to open your mouth at some point. So it might be like, hey, I'd like to express attraction. Are you open to that, or would you prefer I didn't?
Great. And that's great. And that can go for anybody.
Yeah.
Right? Because
man, woman, also anybody.
Intense. It doesn't matter what the configuration is. But here's the other thing that I think we can all learn to do a little more graciously. If you were to say that you were attracted to me, like you did earlier, which was very sweet. You said you had a lifelong crush, or however long it's been, right?
Yes, crush. That's true.
So I didn't contract away from that. We didn't have a breath where I could really receive it. But so when a man has come to me and they're like, wow, and they really want, and I look at them and I'm like, wow, thank you so much for really receiving my beauty, or whatever the words come to me. I'm not interested, but I really am grateful that you expressed this to me.
That's beautiful.
so that there can be a completion loop. And almost, I'd say 99.9% of the time when I have expressed that, there's a softening in the man, and then his respect and his protectiveness of me gets activated. So now he wants even more to make sure that I'm feeling like safe in his presence.
Wow.
So it's because we don't complete those receiving cycles that it's also hard. Like if you're giving a compliment or putting your heart out on a line, it's hard, and then it gets just stopped. It's jarring, and then you can get angry or afraid. Like there's a lot of reactions from an incomplete cycle. So, and sometimes, that is a skill set. I have obviously a lot of confidence and groundedness, but that took time to build to that place. And I'm very assured, but that also took time to build. So we can all grow in this way. But even just receiving a look, when someone looks at you, like really let it touch you and understand that it doesn't have to have any meaning. It's just receiving beauty. So maybe you first have to start with flowers or something beautiful in nature, and you receive that beauty really fully, and you realize you don't have to pull the flower out or do anything about it. Like
Or
you just
own it.
Yeah, or you just leave it. Maybe you might smell it a little, but there's gradients of interaction.
Yeah.
But that receiving, because I've been in nightclubs and men are like going nuts and they send their wingman over, and I'm just like, look, are you enjoying what we're, this little dance we're having? They're like, yeah, and they're getting really into it. And I said, well, really enjoy it, because this is all you get. And I'm very clear, like, I will dance with you, but that doesn't mean anything else. And I'm establishing that boundary in a very loving and playful way. And if they weren't respecting that, and obviously I move out of this experience, but I'd say majority of the time they're like, whoa, and they really get it. So boundaries.
Yeah. Healthy boundaries.
Healthy boundaries.
And I'm also hearing welcoming and feeling.
Yeah.
So, wow, what a conversation. Thank you. It was, I think, even juicier than I expected it was going to be. Where can people find out more about you?
Yes. So my website, dareyourdesire.com. There's also desirethebook.com. I recommend it because it has those 5 evolutionary stages of Eros in there. And it also teaches you to create a new relationship with desire. And then on YouTube, I did The Naked Truth of Desire as a TEDx. So that could also possibly inspire you.
Yeah, definitely go and check that out. All right, Saida, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, David. It was beautiful.
All right, that's a wrap for the official episode portion. We're still live. I'm happy to just hang out with you and chat live, or we can end the broadcast and chat offline. What would you prefer?
Maybe we could have a couple more minutes and just, I'm curious how this was landing, because I did a lot of the speaking. It was less of a conversation in this last little section.
Yeah, I like this. I've never done this and had a candid debrief. Now that I feel kind of off stage, but recorded in that people can witness if they want to hang out with us and chat, like in the green room afterwards. Yeah. I love that. It was great. I have a different frame than you, because I'm tracking the time and tracking for context, and people do they know what we're talking about and stuff like that. So sometimes I jumped in and I was like, all right, let's tell them what we're talking about, because we kind of got ahead of ourselves a little bit. But I was moved in this. I particularly liked it when you said, I can't imagine that would ever not land nicely from you. That felt, I was like, that's really sweet. And some of the stuff we got into was really relevant for me today, because this has touched me. Me Too movement hopefully has touched everybody. And it was great. I didn't feel like you talked too much at all.
Fantastic. Well, I've been working on a kind of more heightened level of Me Too in terms of the gender-based violence that is everywhere on this planet. And more specifically, I've focused my attention in South Africa. And one of the understandings that I have is we have to have a cultural shift on how we do relationship and we do interact with one another. And I have a sense not only do the women need to do their work, but the men also need to be invited to move from predator to protector as an archetype. Because there's many in South Africa, there's a lot of it, and there's a lot of misogyny, and there's a lot of assumptions that, well, she's my wife or my girlfriend, I can do whatever I want, kind of thing.
Yeah. There's been some cultures where it's not rape if you're married. Right?
Exactly. And even here in the USA, it's only fairly recent where they passed a law that it wasn't considered rape.
Right.
I think it was in the 1970s. It's not that long ago.
Oh, wow. So we've still got a lot of work to do.
We got a lot of work to do. So, but imagine that invitation, like feel the beast, feel the part that wants to hunt and be the predator, and allow that to actually transform through your awareness into protector. And what I always say is, if you take something without it being generously given, you're the beggar. It's an empty bowl. You're getting nothing. You get nothing. Raping a woman gives you nothing. But protecting her and allow her to flourish and blossom and trust you and open, you will be given the Garden of Eden. And if we could just collectively start to understand that, even as a consideration, it could be incredible with the shift that happens, because I can be very free because I have healthy men around me.
Yeah.
And they would all give their lives for me. They protect me fiercely. But they're also healthy that way because I don't reject their masculinity. I celebrate it. And so there's a cultivation that's happening where right?
It occurs to me, if you can bottle that, then you could sell that to a lot of women in corporate America and everywhere, because how wonderful to cultivate in a healthy way. You're redirecting the energy, right?
Yeah.
I'm a guy.
You're doing yes and.
Yeah. But see, I've got this energy and I'm a guy. And if I'm excluded from the feminine, and now I'm getting in touch with just a little bit of pain from my youth, because I just wanted the feminine and I felt rejected all the time. I had no idea how to speak to them, speak to women. But if I'm excluded, I can see how that energy would go over into predator. I'll watch porn. I'll just try and do whatever I can. I don't feel with women. It's an againstness. So I'm now using women. I imagine, I think twice in my life I've used a prostitute, and it wasn't a very fulfilling experience at all. So there's that predator energy, and what you're offering is a way that energy can be directed, and that I can be included in the feminine and welcomed by the feminine. And now, I can see that I would lay down my life. I've many times been in the protector role, literally in a sex club, being like almost a bodyguard or a bouncer for a mutual friend.
Yes.
I would do anything to make sure that she was safe, because I was given that role.
And when you're in that role and you're witnessing things, and you can go to your brothers and say, hey, brother, this is not the way.
Yeah.
We do this differently here.
Yeah.
And you teach each other as men, because it's not the sole responsibility of women to educate men on proper behavior. Good men need to help their confused brothers to become good men and protectors and delicious beasts, because we don't want that to go away either. But there's a place for that quality of energy. So I'm always inviting the good men to, why are you silent? Interfere, help, support. You can do that. You have that in you. It doesn't make sense always when I do it, because then I'm either mothering or, just doing it puts me in a weird role.
Yeah.
So
we can speak up with our brothers when we see or hear something that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've enjoyed this after chat even more than the actual interview. So I'm gonna include this in the episode, and it's going to be a long episode, but I think well worth it.
Fantastic, David. Big hugs, lots of love. Mwah.
Mwah.
You've been listening to Tough Conversations with David Wood. Now it's action time. Mastering your tough conversations will have a major impact on your team, your company, and you as a high-performing executive or entrepreneur. If you're ready, request a discovery session with me at playforreal.life so we can transform your team, your company, and you. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I would love you to help me spread this message of tough conversations in a very simple way. Just leave a public review at playforreal.life/podcast. And you may hear me read it out loud and thank you live on a future podcast. Now, let's play.